We've gone ahead and created our first articles in Joomla, but they weren't terribly interesting in terms of their formatting. We just copied down a text file and we pasted it right into Joomla. And while it's very readable, it's just not terribly interesting looking. So let's take a look at those articles that we just put in and add a little bit of formatting to them. So I'm going to go to my article manager and click on the icon here on the control panel. And here's all of the articles that I have just created. I'm going to go to the About Us article, click on the link, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. And you'll see that we actually have some subheadings here within this article, including Celebrating the Best of Modern Art and an Introduction. One of the things that you probably would like to do with this is to make those subheadings stand out. The way that people normally think about approaching this is to highlight those words and hit the B button to make them bold. A better way to do this on a web page is to use the heading tags, which will add pre-designed styles that will give great formatting to this article. What's more, search engines like to see words inside of heading tags, which will help increase your search engine rankings for this website. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the words Celebrating the Best of Modern Art. And then here in this drop-down where it says Paragraph, I'm going to switch this to say Heading 2. And notice that not only the words Celebrating the Best of Modern Art, but the words underneath, starting with Samoka, got a little bit larger. That's likely because since we copied and pasted from a text file, these are only separated by break tags inside of your HTML rather than actual paragraph tags. So to get rid of this problem, I'm just going to delete the space here between these headings and then hit return so that I actually get a paragraph tag. And then within this paragraph, I just need to click anywhere inside of it and I can switch this back to a paragraph. So now we have our heading that's a little bit big and our paragraph that's a bit smaller. It's likely we'll encounter the same thing here with an introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same treatment. We'll take our an introduction and we'll make it set to a heading 2. It looks like an introduction is also attached to the paragraph above it, which would make sense. So I'll go ahead and delete those spaces as well, and once again reset this to a paragraph. So now you see we have a full article here with 2 headings that I've gone ahead and put in place, and we have paragraphs underneath of that. Those of you who are HTML geeks like me, you love HTML and you love all those tags, you can in fact get to the HTML here. There's 2 ways of doing it. One is you can click this HTML button right here inside of TinyMCE, and you can see the code that makes up this particular page. Note, for example, in between 2 paragraphs here, I actually have 2 break tags. That's what I was talking about, as opposed to 2 actual paragraph tags, which I could fix here in the HTML, or I could fix inside of the editor. You can also get there by clicking this Toggle Editor button, and that will go ahead and put the text directly in here. What's the difference between Toggle Editor and this HTML button? Well, Joomla does a certain amount of filtering of HTML tags, and TinyMCE does a certain amount of filtering of HTML tags. The point of filtering HTML tags is to try to keep your site safe so that somebody can't get into your website, fill up an article with a bunch of hackerish sort of PHP and JavaScript and all kinds of crazy things, and then wind up blowing up your whole website. So some amount of text filtering has been applied to this to make sure that none of those bad tags get into place. If you use the HTML button here inside of TinyMCE, the text and tag filtering for TinyMCE will be applied. If you use this Toggle Editor button down here on the bottom, you're actually temporarily removing TinyMCE from the equation, and only Joomla's text filtering will be applied in place. I'm going to go through text filtering in great detail in a couple of videos and show you how we can adjust that to various user groups so that you can include things in your articles like YouTube videos and Facebook feeds and Twitter things and so forth. But for now, we'll just go ahead and leave things as they are. As you might expect, the other buttons on this page work accordingly. If you highlight a word and you hit the big B button, you'll wind up making it bold. If you highlight something else, art museum, for example, and hit the italic button, you'll wind up making things italic. So these buttons are very Microsoft Word-like in their functionality. You, of course, can also highlight these words and hit the button again to turn them off. There's also buttons here for setting up bullet lists or numbered lists. That's, of course, the UL and the OL tags in HTML. You can, of course, include some links here, superscripts and subscripts. The omega character here is actually inserting a special character like a registered trademark character, that kind of thing. But we are actually very limited in the number of tools that we have up here on the top. You might be curious to know that there are ways that we can add some additional buttons to this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and click Save and Close. And if you go to Extensions, Plugin Manager, you will find the TinyMCE plugin listed here. It's about halfway down the page here in the first page of plugins. Go ahead and click on that. And inside of the screen, this is where you can configure some of the features with TinyMCE. Right now, our functionality is set to Advanced. And we have actually 3 choices. Simple will even strip down the buttons even further and give you almost no choices in terms of buttons. But Extended will add significantly to the number of buttons that you have. So if you go ahead and switch this to Extended and hit Save and Close, and then we're going to go back to our article manager, and I'm going to click on the About Us article again, you'll see that now we have many, many more buttons up here on the top for TinyMCE. In fact, we may have too many buttons at this point because this many buttons can really confuse your client. It also gives them a lot of flexibility for adding formatting to these articles. For example, let's say we want Samoka to be Comic Sans, everybody's favorite font. See how I just did that? And of course, if you take a look at the editor, you'll see that it's put in a span tag here with a font family of Comic Sans. So you probably don't really want that happening. So you might want to limit some of these buttons. You want to give your client a few more buttons, but maybe you don't want to give them all of these buttons. The notable one that's really great to give them is the Paste from Word button here. If I was copying and pasting from Microsoft Word, I would copy from my Word document and then click this button. Paste from Word directly into this window, and that would allow for that code cleanup such that all of that funky Word formatting that sometimes comes over would be taken care of by TinyMCE. I'm going to hit Cancel because I don't really want to save that Comic Sans font into that article. I'm going to go back to the Plugin Manager, and I'm going to go back to the TinyMCE plugin, and I'm going to show you one additional screen here. Under your Advanced Parameters, you do have the option of turning on and off some of the features here in TinyMCE, such as the fonts, for example, is a really great one to hide. So if I set the fonts to hide, for example, and then hit my Save and Close button, when I go back to my Article Manager and I go back to my About Us article, I can no longer change my font to Comic Sans or change the size of it. It's all now under control of the style sheet. As a Joomla designer or a Joomla developer, that's probably really what you want in the end anyway. And you could continue that process to go through all of these buttons. Having said all of this about TinyMCE now, the default editor that comes with Joomla, there is a much better editor that's available called JCE, the Joomla Content Editor. And in another couple of chapters, I will go through JCE in great detail. And it too has the ability for customizing these buttons and giving your client a significantly improved interface with great usability. I'm very enthusiastic about it, and I install it on all of the sites that I build. So I would encourage you to play around a little bit here with TinyMCE and see what's possible. But don't get too excited about all of the features and functionality that are here yet, because there's something coming better in the next few videos.